Welcome to Friday Fish Facts. I'm your host, Ron DeSantis. Today, my guest needs no introduction. He is right on the very top of the YouTube FishTube group. His name is Korie. He owns and operates Aquarium Co-Op along with his store. He's got a couple of YouTube channels. He's got his main Aquarium Co-Op channel. He's got Maboo Studios. He's got Real Fish Talk. Korie, welcome to Friday Fish Facts. Thank you very much for stopping in.
My pleasure. It gives me I was able to take a break from tonight from doing my own live stream because I got to do one tomorrow anyway. So it worked out to be perfect.
Yeah, tomorrow you've got the crazy 4-hour stream going on starting at 10 in the morning Pacific time, I believe, right?
Yep, 10 a.m., 4 hours. I used to do 8 hours, but I found that I'm not sure 8 hours is any better than 4 hours for people. Like 8 hours is an obscenely long time for myself and everyone that wants to watch it. So 4 hours seems to get about the same amount of enjoyment accomplished, and it's not as nearly hard on me. So
4 hours is a long time. Unfortunately, it's not a holiday in Canada here where I am. I'm just about 2.5 hours north of you, so I will have to catch the replay because our Thanksgiving's in October.
Right.
But anyway, I thought I reached out to Korie, asked him if he would come on the stream today, and within about 2 hours, he said, yes, I would. And it's the biggest day of this channel's history. So thanks very much for that, Korie. I wanted to give the folks that are on my stream every Wednesday, because I have a host on or a guest on with me every Wednesday, a chance to ask you some questions because maybe they don't always get into, but
Sure.
I kind of had a few questions of myself. Now, I just saw you on the Aqua Dudes podcast, and not everyone knows that Aquarium Co-op has got a podcast, but they do.
Yeah.
And you'd kind of mentioned before you moved into your house, you had about 1,000 to 1,500 subs, and you told your wife you were really going to go for it and get into YouTube. So how did you get from like 1,500 subs to like 10,000 subs?
Yeah, so I had about 1,500, and I decided I was going to go really into it after we moved. And so at that point, we were living more north than where we are, and my wife was like a manager for Winco, which is a grocery store, and it had her like 45 minutes north, and it had Aquarium Co-op, our business, 45 minutes south of where we live. So we were like, polar opposite of as far as we could really drive and make work. And we knew we had to buy a house and that kind of stuff. And so once we bought a house, I could finally build the fish room that I wanted to. And that's because up until then, we'd always rented, and it was always by the rules of the landlords of like, okay, I can't do any auto water change and that kind of stuff. And I thought it'd be a good opportunity to document that. And I was having a little bit of success with YouTube with just like kind of making product reviews and like a little bit of stuff about the store, but nothing was like a hit. Like we just, like I had some employees trying to do it. I was trying to do it. And I decided that I was going to try to do it really hard. And so I was making a few videos, like summer tubbing videos, because we were still looking for a house and there was not much else I could do. And then that kind of fell off for about 6-7 months. And when I came back, I want to say I was at about 4,000 subscribers. So people were still watching and subscribing while I was gone. So I came back to having more, which is like a great feeling, obviously. And from there, if you watch like the first videos, they were super awkward of me like taking it serious. It was kind of the first time, maybe not the first time, but it was very early where I'm in front of the camera. Like instead of me always being behind the camera showing my fish and stuff, it was me being on camera. And so I'm standing there all stiff and like, and I didn't know how to edit. So that's where I learned to do everything in one take. Yeah, I was like, I didn't know how to edit. So if I screwed up, I would just keep going. And so that's where like my first fish room video, like the fish room update series, is me sitting in front of the camera for like 7 seconds before I start saying anything, because I was thinking about what I'm going to say. So it's kind of a great like chronological order of how hard it is to do YouTube. And then eventually it gets super easy because you've done it a million times. And from there, it just kind of like every week, essentially at that point, I would just save up all the footage I would do on my Fishroom and jam it into like a 45-minute video and put it out. And people were enjoying it because there was all these. I think the benefit to it was there was a little of everything. There'd be some cichlid stuff, some guppy stuff, some let's build some stuff, let's tinker with this. And that kind of got me to about 30,000, not even just 10,000. Like that model, I might have gone to 2 videos at one point. I definitely tried like a Tuesday tip or like something like that, and those didn't work at all. But yeah, it was about 30,000 when like a yearish later or something like that when I went to the aquatic experience. And that's when it really was like, oh my gosh, I think I've made it. Like random people were treating me like a celebrity, which was super awkward and weird because at the store, I was just a store owner, and then people that were local would come in and I'm just a store owner. But when I had gone outside of my store, now people were treating me like, oh my gosh, you're that guy on YouTube. And that was a super weird experience. And from there was like no looking back.
So you're about 30,000 subscribers. You're still doing all your filming and editing yourself, right?
Yep.
So how did you meet Jimmy, and when did you meet Jimmy?
So Jimmy, for those that don't know, he's my editor, my full-time editor. I think probably around 30,000 subs. I knew that I couldn't run like a business full time and keep making these videos because it was killing me. And at that time, I remember this now. I remember like the month of aquatic experience was November. And I remember for the last 50 days, I think I had gone daily. I was making a video every single day. And going to the aquatic experience when I learned that that's impossible because I got on a plane at 10 a.m. and I got into my hotel room at 10 p.m. and there was nothing to film in between it. So that's when I learned that daily was impossible. And I think from there, I kind of knew that if I was going to put out a lot of videos, I needed someone to edit because like, even though I didn't know how to edit, stringing things together and then just hitting the render button to like get it ready for YouTube and doing all that was its own amount of work. And I had very bad computers and it was taking hours and hours and hours. And so I knew I was looking, and I think the first attempt is I hired so I had an employee named Lamont. He used to be on the Real Fish Talk way back before it was like a podcast. We shot it in this room actually, but it wasn't live or anything. We just talked to a camera for like an hour. And his brother was big into film, like actually worked on movies and that kind of stuff. And so that was the first attempt I had at someone editing. And it was like $300 for one video. And what came back was not better than what I could do. And the problem was I basically just handed them this raw footage and I didn't do any extra shots or anything. So they basically put it together and cut it a little bit, but it was what I would have done. And at the time, I had no idea what B-roll is. And for those of you that don't know, like if I'm talking about a fish and I was talking about clown loaches right now, clown loaches would come on the screen or something like that. And so I had no concept of what that was. And I had to learn all that. And so I was looking for an editor. I didn't know what they cost. I didn't know who I was looking for because I had no idea about this job because I can't do it. And I remember seeing, so I think it actually might have started with Bob Steenfott. I believe he linked a video to me that was LR Brett's Aquatics, his Fishroom. Okay. And I think it wasn't Jimmy's original video. It was a different video. And we knew that we were going to be in Chicago. And at that first aquatic experience I went to, we drove to his house in the middle of the night, filmed, and then drove back. And then I believe it was Jimmy's video that came out because I had subscribed to him at that point. And I saw like LR Brett's promoting it or something. And I watched his video.
A different channel name at the time, right?
I think so. Yeah. I can't remember what it was, but at the time, I watched Jimmy's video and it was much more like Casey Neistat type of vloggy thing. And just, it was so cool to me because I'd finally seen in the fish fam or the fish community, like a super edited video. And to me, that was like, yes, that's exactly what I've been trying to find or do, or I just knew that was the right way to move. And I analyzed that thing more than anyone would ever analyze any video before. I was taking notes and doing all these things. And I remember, let's say months later, I asked him, I thought there was There's a scene in that video, if you go watch it,
Yeah.
where the trunk opens up and he's like, okay, let's get ready to go into LR Brett's. And then they're like, the birds are chirping. And I thought he was the smartest man alive for putting in the bird chirps.
Yeah.
Turns out those birds actually just chirped. Like he didn't put them in, like it just happened to be the perfect moment. But I thought he was a
Cool.
genius. I'm like, yeah, who would have thought to put in the bird chirp? That's amazing.
You're hired.
Yeah, exactly. So I actually couldn't get a hold of the guy. So I knew I was like, oh man, I got to
Yeah.
figure out, could I hire this guy? I have no
Yeah.
idea what he does for a living. Like, I don't know anything of Swisky at that point. I didn't know his
Yeah.
name is Jimmy.
Yeah.
And he was doing live streams and about fish, and he had a little fish room, and
He was breeding some plecos, I think.
he was trying to breed some plecos. He had some discus. He got a
Yeah.
goldfish. He had a crayfish, and he'd do these live streams. And it was kind of a weird thing because here I am, like not a large YouTuber, but a little bit bigger,
Yeah.
and trying to like, how do I get a hold of this guy without telling everyone I'm trying to hire him or anything weird? Like, I don't want anything like weird going on. And so I remember like trying to keep getting in conversations, and the one I eventually lured him in with candy. Because at the time we had went on our honeymoon, my wife and I, and we went to Japan. We brought back all these crazy Kit Kats, like this the craziest like butter flavor, wasabi, like just crazy. Like one tasted like flowers and all this stuff. And I was like, dude, give me your email address, and then I'll like get your actual address, and I'll ship you some of this cool candy, right?
Yeah.
And totally being that I just wanted to ask him like, hey, what's it cost to edit videos and do this kind of
Yeah.
stuff? And like, what are you doing? And I actually never even sent him that candy, but that's how it did start. And,
Well, that's cool.
going forward, I actually didn't know this, that at the time he was doing that. So he just wanted to be an editor because he really is into photography and all that, if you know Jimmy.
Yeah.
And so he was actually trying to get hired by Flip Aquatics. That was his big move.
Good.
He knew who I was and all that kind of stuff, but
Yeah.
because Flip Aquatics and him were both in Ohio, it totally made sense. So his thought was, let me get hired by Flip Aquatics. And so hindsight being 2020, I'm very, very lucky. Like, I couldn't have known that was his ultimate goal, and I was just swooped in at the exact right time. And we worked remotely for a long time, eventually moved him out here, and it's been, kind of awesome ever since.
That's awesome, man. I noticed just I've been kind of breezing through the chat here as well, because we got a bunch of people in here, and I noticed the JQ channel has said this is the most that this channel's ever had. I don't like to brag, but I have had up to 30 people before in this chat. So, I mean, I realize we do have about 115 right now, but I really appreciate everyone coming over.
What a lot of people don't realize, and I know this because I run multiple channels and that kind of stuff, is that running a live stream with only 30 people is 10 times harder than 300 or 1,000 people, because you look into the chat and no one said anything. You have to keep it going. When you have 1,000 people chatting, you're like, oh, look at all these questions I could answer if I wanted to. There's never a slow moment. So I definitely, when I go to like the Mabu Studios channel and there's 12 people there, it can be way harder than 1,000 people. So it only gets easier from here.
I definitely have to be prepared, that's for sure. I always have my topic or list of questions, because lately I've been having a guest on with me.
Sure.
And so if the chat kind of dries out a little bit, then I just jump back into the questions.
Yeah.
But I do have a lot of guys in here, guys and gals. And I did notice Candy is in here, and someone's commented that she's not a mod in this channel. It's like the only one. And Candy does the great job. She's an excellent mod. I just feel like I want to give her a break. Just kick back and enjoy. Because you're the mod on all the big channels, so you come over to this little channel, you can just hang out. I know that there's going to be a question from Mile High Plecos here, which is going to be, what's your favorite pleco? Because he asks all the guests the same question. So, Korie, what's your favorite pleco?
My favorite plecostomus is the leopard frog, L134.
Yeah.
And I kind of tell people, like, I'm a guy that can get a hold of any fish anytime I want, and I would still pick those. I'd pick them over zebra plecos, other exotic stuff, like just pound for pound. They're super adorable. They're great. They're mild-mannered. They don't really fight like a lot of other plecos, and they're not too finicky to keep. Yeah, you can breed them. I mean, there's a lot of perks to them, but I really do love the leopard frog pleco.
Yeah,
I mean, I
that's
love a lot of plecos, but if I have to pick one, I'm picking that one.
me too. I'm super addicted to plecos right now. I'm in like the collecting phase of like
Mm-hmm.
any new pleco. I just want to get my hands on it.
Yep.
Well, we got a few. We had a few more people in here that are always here. We've got like Rob93. He's one of my great mods. He's great for the fish fam. We've got Ryan, the lucky schmuck. He's in here, and I appreciate you giving me. He was sharing the video around today as well.
Perfect.
Thanks, Ryan. Ryan kind of started around the same time as me, but he's totally blown up. He's got a crazy fish cave that if you haven't seen his fish cave, check out the lucky schmuck.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had a lot of folks in here that have been around. I just want to give them, a little bit of attention. Cameron from Learning to Fish Keep, and all these kind of guys here. Anyway, you guys in the chat, think of some questions for Korie. I'm going to go back to a couple of my own questions, and then we're going to go read some in the chat. So I've asked you about Jimmy, how you met Jimmy.
Yep.
And Terry Lindsay, who I know is watching right now. Now he's a fan of yours. You've actually met him. He was down when you had your little hangout group down at your store about a year ago, maybe last January.
Okay, yep. Mm-hmm.
Him and his wife came down. He actually bought me. This is signed by you, even though I've never.
Oh, okay. I remember that. Yeah.
So he bought me this shirt
because
I couldn't make it down there that weekend, and I just wanted to say hello to Terry. But anyway, we were talking today. Like he's super excited. We worked together and had this dinner thing we're supposed to go to tonight, and he bailed on it just so he could watch this stream.
Oh, dang. Hopefully you don't get in trouble.
He's like, I want to know how he met Bob Steampot. So, Korie, how'd you meet Bob Steampot?
I got to think about this because I can't, like, I tell Jimmy's story all the time. I'm trying to think of how did I meet Bob? If I had to guess, part of these people have been so in my life for a while now.
Like you didn't go to high school with them or anything?
No. So we live close to each other, but I think it was through the Greater Seattle Aquarium Society, possibly, because he wasn't a YouTuber. That I do know. I spent a long time egging on Bob to become a YouTuber. Like he did not want to become a YouTuber, and he was very adamant about that. He had like some reptile videos.
Yeah.
But why? I'm trying to think. Like he would come over and hang out, like, and we just work on some fish stuff. But I think it was he followed me on YouTube. He shopped at the store, and it might be that. It might be he legit just came into the store one day, and he was making the transition from reptiles to fish.
Yeah, his first video is him feeding a reptile, I think, on his lap.
Yeah, and so it might be legit. He just came into the store and then became a GSAS member, but in that realm of kind of in the local scene, and he's kind of just a cool guy, as most people would admit. So we kind of connected, and then, obviously we connected well because not every person that shops at my store like just gets to come over to my house, So it definitely progressed from there.
Thanks for coming in. Here's my address. Come on over.
Exactly. But yeah, I can't pinpoint a specific thing. Like a lot of people like Joel and that kind of stuff I know specifically, but yeah, that one's kind of just like has to be the store. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Somebody's asking what's your favorite, or what do you recommend for a pleco for a smaller tank?
The best one, in my opinion, is hard to get a hold of, but it's the Dwarf Claro LDA08. So imagine a bristle nose that only gets about 1 3/4 inches.
Yeah.
They're super cool. I bred them. I've got them, in videos and that kind of stuff. We sell them at the store time to time. Most times you're going to get them wild caught because, like, I was breeding them. The problem is at 6 months old, they're still like 1 inch, and people don't want to spend like $20 to $30 on a 1-inch pleco. They're thinking it's still a baby, and the reality is like, it only gets this big full grown, so it's already like half grown. And so it's a hard thing to sell in a store. So typically you're getting wild caught. They come in full grown, and then you can sell them for about $30 and super cool. But if you want something easier to get a hold of, get yourself a clown pleco. They're pretty cool and they stay small.
Yeah, about 4 inches or so, eh?
Mm-hmm. That'd be a Mac Daddy one. I mean, usually they're like 2.5, 3.
Yeah. Okay. K-Town Reefer is wondering. K-Town's Kelowna, which is about 4 hours from me.
Okay.
Okanagan, which is wine country. He's wondering if you're ever going to sell any saltwater stuff.
No. Nope. Well, I mean, I sell like a saltwater light online.
Yeah.
Just because it makes sense, I guess. I'm not even okay. The reason I sell like the Fluval saltwater light is because I think it's really good for African cichlids as well.
Yeah.
But there's so much saltwater stuff that I don't sell, and I think what that does is I can't possibly test everything if I'm adding on saltwater stuff too. Like, I genuinely test everything and make sure I really like it, and I know what people aren't going to like. And even the reps give me a hard time. Like, I don't get it. You sell $500,000 in this item, and then our other item that sells really well, you won't sell. And it's
Yeah.
like, for instance, a perfect example of that would be the Fluval Aqua Skylight.
Yeah.
And the reason I don't sell it is because it doesn't have an on and off button. You can only control it through an app. And I think the light it gives out to the money ratio is not good enough. Like, you should either just buy the Fluval 3.0
Mm.
or a much cheaper light. Like, it's right in between, and it's got some faults in there, and I'm not sure it's a good value for the customer. Even though, PetSmarts and Petco's and that kind of stuff sell a ton of them, I don't want to reward them more for, like, it should have an on and off button, just like the higher end light. They're like, well, we had to cut costs somewhere, and it's like,
Yeah.
but you're cheapening the user experience because of it.
I guess you don't want to water down the freshwater part
No,
of
for
your.
sure. There's a lot of I tell my employees and that kind of stuff. I never want to be the store where a customer walks in and says, like, "Oh, the saltwater guy doesn't work today," or, "Oh, I'm sorry, I only know saltwater." Like, it should be that every person can help you the same.
Well, one thing, like, I've made a trip down to your store, and it's like the holy grail of stores. It has everything you need in your store, and a lot of people ask me, "Wow, how did you bring fish and plants back over the border?" It's not a problem bringing stuff back from the border. So if you're in British Columbia, which is where I am, I'm about 2.5 hours from Corey's store.
Mm-hmm.
All they do is they write down the scientific names on the bags, and then you drive them back into Canada, and you just have to have it all ready for you. So I get stopped at the customs, and he says, "What do you have?" "I've got fish." "What kind of fish?" Well, I've got an L128 blue phantom pleco. And the guy just kind of stares blankly at me. He's like, "Freshwater, saltwater, freshwater. Okay, go." So it's not a problem. Anybody in BC that's out there, I am telling you, it is worth the trip. Make a day of it. Like, his staff is like so friendly, and I'm sure they were sick of me. I was there with my family for 2.5 hours, like, getting the tour, and but you're gonna spend a lot of money, so just be prepared, because it is a 2.5 hour drive. But they have everything, and the quality of fish that they have. They've got fish that we don't see around here, like epistogramies and stuff like that, and fancy plecos. And I've got some of his archer fish in this 220 behind me right here. Like, pleco caves, with, like, PetSmarts don't have up here. Like, breeding huts, everything you can imagine, Aquarium Co-op has. So
Packed
I
into the tiniest store possible.
yeah, it's not the biggest. Like, when you walk in, it's not the biggest store you've ever walked into, but it's friendly, it's homey. You get like a homey feel in there. It's very friendly, and maybe I possibly outwore my welcome while I was there, but I absolutely loved it, and I'm totally going to be
We
going
have
back.
it happen all the time. People travel from around the world to visit. So, like, if you fly from Australia, for instance, you're going to spend some time at the store. We get, everywhere around the world, people travel in. And so we're pretty used to it. The only thing we ask is that people are a little bit accommodating when it's like, I got to break off for a second, go help these locals,
Yeah,
and then we can come back
yeah,
and chat and show you stuff and, do all the fun stuff.
yeah, totally. I mean, you get the people that go there once a year, never going to come back again. Well, you got to be loyal to your guys that come in all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Shasimi Aquatics, he's got a question. What's your favorite Corridora?
My favorite Corridora, I can't even remember the name. I always think it's Ralabuti, and I know it's not. It's the flagtail Korie that's got like a tail that looks like a rummy nose, where it's black and white striped, and it starts with an R, and I forget it every time. And I've only ever seen them in person once, and that was in Japan.
Yeah,
And well, that's not true. I saw them one other time as a hobbyist, but I couldn't afford them because they were like $20 a piece, and I was like, "Who's ever going to pay $20 for a
yeah.
Corridor?
And
That's
you need
insane."
five at least, so
Yeah.
there's $100.
Yep, and at that time I was not spending that kind of money on fish, like, at all. And then I've never seen them again except for in Japan, and it was too hard to get them back out of Japan. Um, is it Robine? I think it's Robine. I don't know if someone said in the chat yet, but Robine, I think. I always want to say Ralabuti, and I think it's Robine. Corridors Robine is my holy grail that I'm after. part of the problem is they've never been bred in captivity. So I would love to like get some and then hand them off to Dean and see if he can't make it happen.
Yeah. Well, Dean's currently. So I actually had the pleasure of meeting Brendan Flynn this last weekend. We went to my local fish auction, and it was his first one ever. I met him and his dad, and he was telling me about those dark night rams that he got from the East Coast that Dean's breeding right now. Have you seen those, Cory?
I haven't seen them in person yet. Like as much as, well, that's not true. I did see them in person, like very briefly, but not all the time that like Dean and I are together are we just like fully doing fish. Sometimes like just to hang out and go out to eat and that kind of stuff. And we do a lot of like I won't say we. It happens a lot around my store that, let's say Brendan Flynn will come down, Dean will meet up, Jimmy will meet up, and someone else from out of town. And they'll go out to lunch. And I think I've yet to make it. My wife can make it, but I'm either always out of town or I've always got some kind of meeting that prevents me from doing it. So, but I intend to make it more often.
So you first got in. Here's another question that people ask me all the time. People that are not so much fish people. You get into the hobby when you're like 22 or something. I think you mentioned that before.
Yep.
Was your wife your girlfriend at the time?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
For about like a year. If I got in at 23, she was my girlfriend for 2 years. If it was 22, 1 year.
Yep. Okay. So you start getting tanks. How, like, I always get, what does your wife think of all these tanks? Does your wife like this? So did she take some convincing? Is she into aquariums? Was it a constant fight until you started, making money off this? How does it go with you?
So it definitely wasn't a constant fight. But the biggest fight, if you will, which me and my wife and I have never really fought. But it was the first time I ever brought an aquarium home, was the biggest like hubbub we've ever had. And that's because I had been saying for a while I was going to get an aquarium, and I promised I wouldn't get a large one. And I brought a 65-gallon tank home, which seems very large until like there's much larger aquariums. But it seemed like
it is a big tank. 65 is a big tank. Yeah.
Yeah, it's but myself knowing I would have gotten much larger had they had it available. I'm going, well, it's not that big. It's a 65-gallon, like, because I knew 55-gallon was pretty standard from research. Like 55-gallon tank in someone's home, that's pretty normal. Getting just a 10-gallon from research seemed like a giant waste of money and time. But the no was me and my buddy just set it up in our bedroom. Like, so she was like at work. She comes home, we're just setting up the aquarium in the bedroom, and that was like the extra icing on the top. That was like, because I didn't consult her. She didn't want it in the bedroom apparently. But going forward from that, she's been super duper accommodating, and like, she was probably worried that I quit my job and went and worked at a fish store after that. And then, that we're going to open up a business around it and all these things. They don't seem like the best ideas in the world, but I think she knew how hard I work and that it probably would work, or at least it wasn't like insane to attempt it. But she definitely supported us through the whole like opening of the store and the very difficult, like, I basically don't pay myself, kind of first 2 years of the business. Definitely couldn't have done it without her. And I would say that's like the ultimate support of her, working really hard at being a manager and willing to drive 45 minutes to and from work while I'm driving 45 minutes to and from work. That being said, like, making no money over there. I think at the time, for the first like year, the first 6 months paid myself nothing. Like, after that, we paid me $500 a month. And then like we got up to $1,000 in the second year. But
that's not a lot of taco money.
No, you could just go deliver pizza and be making better money than that. Meanwhile, putting in crazy hours, working really hard. There's no time for either of us to see each other. Like, but it obviously is paying off now. So it's, a good thing.
That's awesome. I know my best friend and I, we decided we would pick up a tank for him and set up a 45-gallon bow front as living room. And his wife's a nurse, and she got home from her shift around midnight, and she's mad for about 6 months. So
I had never, I'd never thought she would have gotten that mad. I pulled the same trick on her by getting a dog. She'd never had a dog, and I brought Sasi, which we call Sasi the Destroyer. I that dog home, and it melted her heart. Now she's like the biggest dog person in the world. So what I am to fish, she is to dogs. Like, she absolutely loves the Chihuahuas we have, and she takes care of them. She knows a ton about them and does all that. And like, I love dogs too. Like, obviously you kind of,
Yeah.
you're an animal person if you own a pet store.
Yeah.
But she went from a person that had only ever had like a bunny growing up to now she's like kind of a pet person,
Totally. Well, I'm lucky on that hand. Like, my wife is a veterinary technologist.
Mm-hmm.
She specializes. She's board certified in anesthesia. She's actually the first one in
Wow.
the province. So we're a big animal house. We have rescue dog and cats, and
Mm-hmm.
she had bunnies, and she had like betas, or Siamese fighting fish, as she called them when I first met her.
Yeah.
But she never had fish before. But now she's into fish. You'll see her in like the videos. The last one I did is how to make a bonsai tree. She's making the bonsai tree.
Nice.
Really into aquascaping, and my kids are really into it. And like, this hobby is like so much more fun when the whole family is involved in it.
I think I've ruined it for my wife. Like, I'm so into it and so overbearing that there's there's no room for her just to be like, I just need to figure out how it goes. Like, because she knows that there's like an encyclopedia sitting on the couch next to her that could like answer any question there would be. And so I've tried the hands off, like, just do whatever you want to do. And it
Yeah.
still just becomes like well, what should I do? Because I think part of it is like, let's say you go and you see the 800-gallon when it's looking good in all its glory, and then you try and do something, and then let's say it doesn't look awesome.
Yeah.
You feel extra defeated. And then it's like, well, how should I fix it? And then when I start saying how to fix it, it ends up being like, well, I can't do that. Just do it. And then, so I think that ruins it for her. Whereas like anything else, she can totally enjoy. So I think that's what's kept her from, if you just said like, you can have anything in the aquatic world you want. And she's like, yeah, it's kind of just your thing. You can just do it. Like, she'll totally take care of the fish and she'll do stuff, but she hasn't really gotten into it like a lot of other stuff. So
Cool. I just want to say a quick hi to a couple people in the chat here. We've
sure.
got my cousin Giovanni DeSantis. Priscilla's here, MK Art.
Yeah.
And we got One Fish, Two Fish. Liz is in the house. So just thanks, everyone. Twin City Guppies is here. Twin City Guppies has got beautiful guppies.
He does indeed.
Yeah, out of Minnesota there. I got two questions here that I'm going to read off. I got one is, are you ever going to sell larger fish like Oscars or arowanas in your store?
We've already sold both in my store. We'll sell almost anything special order. Like, we sell arowanas, I would say every other month or so. We keep arowanas in stock. Like, I've had albino arowanas and normal silvers and blacks and that kind of stuff. But it depends on if it honestly comes down to if the employees are ready to battle the public or not. Because once you have an arowana, anyone with a fishbowl is ready to buy an arowana. Like, whether you have a tank or not, you're like, sweet, need to own an arowana. Like, you don't even own an aquarium, but I need this. I can't possibly go home without it today.
I'll just hold it in a bag until I get it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they like, I asked the employees, like, do we want to do another run of arowanas? And like, right now being go time with Black Friday and Christmas, we probably won't sell any arowanas. But then, like, a good time to sell arowanas is kind of January and February. People have extra money from tax returns, and you can kind of like, let's get a very large tank and let's do it right, as opposed to the middle of summer where everyone's spending all their money camping and that kind of stuff, and they don't want to take no for an answer, and they're like, well, I got to go on a trip and do all that. So, but I don't think you'll walk in and you'll be like, oh, look at this, there's Jack Dempsey's and Oscars and all these other things, because the store is not big enough to handle that correctly.
Yeah.
I could do it really well in a bigger store, but also I've talked about this kind of in the past, that Oscars and Jack Dempsey and basically Central and South American cichlids don't make money. And like, unfortunately, the hobby does revolve around making money when I have staff and that kind of stuff. If you have a 55-gallon tank and I sell you one Jack Dempsey and one Oscar, and all you do is buy food, and then chances are you buy it on Amazon, the store itself, we make no money. Like, we make about $8 between the two fish we've sold you. And then we're going to offer you unlimited customer support and disease prevention and all those kind of things. Or we could sell you live plants and all these fish and that type of stuff and make money from that. But it's just a day and age now where the average person, let's say 7 out of 10 people, will make a purchase online, even if they can buy it in the store and it's the same price. They want to go home, they want to read the reviews, and then it's just easier to click the buy button on Amazon or something like that. And I can't fault them for it. Like, that's how I shop.
Yeah.
And so, but if you know that's how the business works, you need to structure your business around that to be able to stay afloat. And so that's where, when you go into our store, we're very heavy on livestock, things that are very hard to buy online, and not super heavy in dry goods. When you walk in, you're like, there's not even that much dry goods in here. You go to the other space, you're like, whoa, there's 1,000 Fluval lights. Like, online, we sell a ton, but even a lot of the people that are local buy from us online as opposed to coming into the store.
I've got another question here from, this one's another Terry Lindsay one, but I'll read this one. Without giving away your deepest secrets for future growth, what do you want to see in your business and the hobby at large?
Yeah, so it looks very, very, I guess I'm very confident I'll probably be partnering with a large manufacturer that will probably start working together in January. And that means I'll be promoting some of their products, but they're going to help. What I've needed for a very long time is I've needed to partner up with a manufacturer so that I have enough clout to strong arm other manufacturers into doing the right thing. So, for instance, like, one of the things, like, I love Fluval products, but I hate them as a company. And it's because they make decisions that I think are bad. And like, the biggest one that annoys me currently is they refuse to update their Fluval 3.0 app.
Yeah.
And what everyone wants, they want the ability to, like, it has a sunrise and a sunset, but they want it like sunrise, you go to work, and then let's say it turns off for 3 or 4 hours while you're at work. Then you come home, it's back on, and then it sunsets. That's what everyone needs, because that's the way people live their lives. And they basically have straight up said, like, we'll never update that app, because how are we going to sell the Fluval 4.0 if we can't add that feature? And I'm just like, oh, geez, why not really dominate the market, give everyone what they want, and let's find another way to make the 4.0 better instead of, like, just a stupid software upgrade. And so it's stuff like that where, if I was to partner with a manufacturer and we could make, not Fluval 4.0 light that was very similar and worked and did all the things we want to do as a hobbyist, that forces a company like Fluval to, like, oh, well, we'll just put out that update and be competitive. And so that's what I'm looking to do, is make it a little bit more competitive and give input as a hobbyist. And that's why I still keep aquariums, because when you're talking to the guy that designed the Fluval 3.0, he doesn't even own an aquarium. He's never owned an aquarium. He's an electrical scientist guy. Yeah, he's just like, yep, I know the coatings are going to go on the LEDs. I know spectrums. I know this stuff, but they don't understand that, like, the Aqua Sky not having an off and on button is a problem. Not everyone has a cell phone. And just like, people go, like, everyone does have a cell phone. Like, why are you getting uppity, guy? It's like, well, let's imagine for a moment that you're away on work and the wife or the husband wants to turn the aquarium on or off. Like, or the power went out for a second and reset it, and now they literally cannot even control the light. Like, those things matter when you're designing a product. And so that kind of stuff happens. And so that's why I won't support that. But that's what I'm trying to do is, it's going to look like I'm a giant sellout for a little bit, and then some cool things are going to happen. And then people will come back to be like, oh, okay, I get what he was trying to do there, because it looked like he was just selling out and partnering with a company, making a bunch of money, and then doing that. But there is some cool stuff that's going to happen, and I can't reveal it till we do it, because I don't want some other competitor to swoop in and, like, ha, stole your good idea.
Yeah.
But you have to take my word for it.
Dr. Shasimi Aquatic says, this is a dream come true for me, which you're correct. Yes, it is. I'm going to read a question from Donald, NY Gold. I think he was at the Aquatic Experience.
He was, yeah, I met him. Yep.
Chance to meet him. He wants to know if the Chinese food is better in China or the U.S.
It's completely different. So Chinese food in the U.S. is not Chinese food. It is, like most things in America, we're Americanizing things. So, like, let's say we're going to eat chicken in America, it's going to be, like, mostly breast meat and not very chewy or anything like that. And maybe we've deep fried it and put some breading on it and made it almond fried chicken, or we made it general like sweet and sour and all that kind of stuff. And then you go have chicken in China, and in general, they'll take a chicken and just quarter it and put it into a soup, and that's how you eat it. Like, so I remember one like prestigious lunch I was having at a manufacturer in Guangzhou. They had brought a chicken from very far away, which was like, 700 miles away. It was 3 years old, which normally you want younger chicken, but the 3-year-old chicken was a delicacy. And while we were having this prestigious lunch, they it still had the skin on it. It still had some of the feathers and all that kind of stuff. And it was, I don't want to say it's brutal because that's rude, but it was very difficult for most people from the USA to eat that. Like, I ate it as a courtesy. I wouldn't say like, "Ooh, keep it coming" or anything like that. The broth itself, absolutely amazing, very, very good. But in general, we're just not used to literally chopping a chicken into force and then eating it that way. Like, it's just that kind of stuff where it's like, oh, yeah, we just don't do that. And so it's, pulling through the tendons and that kind of thing is not natural to us. And, but yeah, so I would say there is food in China that is very, very, very good. In general, when you leave America, food quality is just straight up higher. So, like, we had at the convention, we ate at a Papa John's, and their pizza was amazing because it wasn't filled with antibiotics and all that kind of stuff. And then we also had, like, at McDonald's, they have all these cool foods from around the country or around the world as well. So, like, they had the German burger and it had bratwurst on it, and the meat quality was super duper high. And so everyone, like, when they saw, like, you guys ate at McDonald's, go eat at McDonald's in China. They'd be like, McDonald's in China tastes amazing. Like, it is way better than we can get. And then they had, like, popcorn chicken that was, like, to die for. And that's all I can say is that, like, when your options are like go into a restaurant that won't speak any English and point to a thing and hope it's good, or go into McDonald's and they'll have like an English menu and you could be like, yeah, let's try this Germany burger. And it's also amazing. Like, why wouldn't you go with that? And food is so cheap over there. You wouldn't believe that, like, oh, that same meal that's $11 here from McDonald's is literally $1.12 there. Like, it's crazy.
I've been to Shanghai. That's the only part of China I've been to, and some of the food is similar, but it's definitely greasier in the Western world. I would definitely say,
and it's very depends where you go.
I'm a big world traveler, and that's one of the highlights of the trips that I plan. Like, whether I'm going through Europe or Australia or other parts of the U.S. or whatever, I want to make sure I try certain foods in certain places because to me that's a huge part of the culture and a huge part of experience.
We try so much stuff, like, and the YouTube gives it a different lens. Like, we'll show that we went to McDonald's and people are like, oh, you just spent the whole time eating McDonald's. Like, well, you pull out the camera in a restaurant and then they tell you to get out. Like, because there's a lot of things that they're thinking you're trying to film and do all that kind of stuff. So it's like, just by proxy, like, I couldn't show you the amazing dinner we had because it said no filming. There's lots of no filming in China. And so it just, it gives the appearance. And also there's the fact that, like, we had my wife and the gentleman I went with, his wife, and they had to use the restroom. Well, at the part of China we were, you couldn't just walk into a restaurant and, like, use the bathroom. We went to McDonald's, we had to buy stuff, and then it was a 30-minute wait to even use a restroom. Like, that's the reason we were in that McDonald's, was to use the restroom, actually. So,
I've got a question from Learning to Fish Keep, which is Cameron. Korie, what's a good starting point for a fish-related business?
A good starting point?
Yeah. So maybe like start with a store, start with an online.
So for me, in my opinion, if you're, no matter what you're gonna do, like, obviously at the point of business, you're selling something at a profit. I think the best starting point is social media, and it doesn't have to be. You don't have to be huge at it, but you have to understand it. You have to drive some sales. And it's not even your own. Like, you don't have to sell a product. You could just go, let's see if I can sell 10 bulkheads on Amazon. Could I pull that off even? And if you can, then you can go, okay, maybe I could sell my own food or my own something else. And I think that's where people need to start, because in this day and age, in my opinion, you can't make it without social media. And you don't have to be everywhere, but you need to be somewhere and you need to do a decent job at it. And right now we're watching tons of companies flounder. Look at, in my opinion, look at the quality of videos of Fluval and Cobalt and New Life Spectrum and that kind of stuff. And you look at the stuff and you're like, you guys really don't get it, do you? Like, you just have to be a normal person talking to these people that want to buy your product already. And it's some people can never get in front of a camera, and it's like, great, if you can never get in front of a camera, like Jimmy hates being in front of the camera. He's amazing behind the camera. Great, go embrace Instagram and do those kinds of things where you can be behind the whole time, but at least learn that skill so you don't have to do what I did, and that is learn on the fly. You have right now, you can go to your, and I say your nice cushy job, working 8 to 5, and put in your 40 hours. You can still put another 40 hours in your own home business type of thing, and then those 80 hours is still less than when you launch your own business. You'll work more than 80 the minute you go full time in your own business.
Great, thanks. Actually, I'm just kind of looking at the chat here, Korie, and Sean has just joined us. If you like beautiful aquascapes with like Monte Carlo plants, he's got some crazy videos on like his aquariums with this beautiful betta swimming in there. Really something to check out. I got another question here in the chat. Are you planning any other fish tuber meetups at the store?
So I haven't planned any of it yet. Like, the problem is everyone's getting busier and busier. So like, I know next week I'll have Aqua Pros at my house, and then in January I have LR Brett's at my house. In December I'm gonna have Radical Reefer here and Aqua Pros. And so there's also, you got to fit in like Christmas. I got to do taxes, and I got to do my sales for Christmas, and we're fitting in a vacation. We do one vacation, my wife and I, per year that's not fish related, and that is to Hawaii, even though it's a great place to go and film for fish.
Hawaii is my favorite place in the world.
Yeah, Jimmy will also be in Hawaii while we're in Hawaii, but he'll be on a different island. And I'm trying to convince him not to film very much and actually take a vacation.
Yeah.
But no, we haven't planned. Like, what I'm trying to do, honestly, is plan the big YouTuber meetups at events. So my goal is to get as many YouTubers to Aquashella down in Dallas, Texas, and in Chicago, and at the Aquatic Experience.
I think Bob's going to that one.
At the AGA in Washington. So I'm not saying it won't happen, but at the same time, with all those events and everyone's got their own lives running, it's kind of hard to actually get it to go. We'd have to do a lot of planning, and it's kind of like, why not do it at this giant event where everyone else is going to be too while we're doing it?
Right on. Thanks, Korie. I think, like I was saying, I think Bob's going to that one in Dallas as well.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I've got a question here from Ryan, Lucky Schmuck's Fish Cave. Korie, have you had a chance to play the new Magic the Gathering Arena? And what have you been plan to do with your limited downtime?
So I have played the Magic the Gathering Arena. I beta tested it. It's still in beta, technically. I don't play it as much as I like. I probably haven't played it in about a month, but right now, believe it or not, I'm playing EverQuest, a very primitive version of it, and I specifically picked a game that has a lot of downtime so that I can be doing emails and conference calls and that kind of stuff, and completely walk away from it. I'm a very competitive person, so I have to pick something that's not competitive. Otherwise, I'll be very frustrated. So my limited downtime, I kind of look at YouTube like a game and business like a game. And the big thing we're trying to decide right now is whether we put a ping pong table in. That's my current.
In the store?
Not in the store, like in the studio, like something that we can all get together and like Jimmy and I, and then like some of the new employees, and just you bond over something that's not fish related. Like, it's so easy to intimidate people with fish knowledge, or people feel left out. But if you're all just a goober trying to hit a ping pong ball and no one's like a pro, it's kind of fun. And it'll be fun to have like Aqua Pros over, and just people that come over. Like, we can all kind of bond around something like that. It could be a foosball table or a pool table or whatever, but that's really what we're trying to do. Even though if I have downtime, it's just me, I can't really go play ping pong. But
you can set up the back table and then hit it to yourself.
Yeah, you can, but that's a sad story. And so Lucky Schmuck, yes, I do play on P99. So you're in the know, buddy. If you're playing, hit me up an email or something and we'll talk.
Hey, Brittany's Arachnid's asking, what's a great starter fish that's beautiful? I think I know what you're going to say, but go ahead.
No, you probably don't, because you would think I was probably going to say guppy, and I don't believe it's a good starter fish. So,
I wasn't I wasn't
oh,
thinking
okay.
guppy.
What then? You tell me what you were going to think, and I'll tell you if I would have ever, if because I mean I've had that question 7 billion times in the store, and I'll know if I've ever led someone there. What do you think it
Well,
would be?
because she added the beautiful at the end, I think
Hmm.
you're thinking betta.
Oh, okay. I typically don't start with a betta only because I feel like people that ask that question have already kept a betta. Like rarely does someone walk into the store and it's like, I want to get into fish keeping and they're thinking about a betta. Like normally that person comes in and goes, how do I keep a betta alive? That's like
Yeah,
where that conversation starts. So for me, I usually ask them, what's your goal? And I know most people goals is like, I want a beautiful tank that's got live plants and big colorful fish. And
yeah,
so
yeah.
I start them out with something that,
With no water changes.
yeah, that's the dream, right? So I try to start them out with something that is not limiting. So like I think if you start with a betta, you're limited with what can go with it. So
Yeah,
I would like if someone just walks in like I have no idea, I try to go like, what about these platies? Look at all the different colors. They get kind
yeah.
of big, and really you could put them with almost anything else in the store, technically. And I do love platies in general, but they're much hardier than like a guppy. And in general, I think they're a great starter fish. They get the, oh my God, I accidentally made more babies fiasco going on, and that really gets them hooked. So I'm a big platy guy.
I agree with you on guppies. Guppies aren't the easiest fish to
Yeah,
keep.
they are not.
I always say like if they didn't throw the beautiful in, the best one to start with a molly. More specifically, a black molly. Those guys are hardy and
They can
beautiful
be
and
if
eat
your
algae,
water's
and they're
right.
easy
Yeah.
to breed. And the fry's a little bit bigger, so
Hmm.
they're not as delicate.
That's the first
Okay,
fish I ever bred. Yeah.
molly, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's get back into the chat here. Rob93 is thinks that you should put a football field in the studio. I'm thinking things might get broken.
Maybe
If
like
that's
table football, like the little folded up the paper football. We'll play some
yeah.
paper football.
Sean says zebra Daniel is a good starter fish,
It
which
ca I don't agree with that. It's don't get me wrong, that is the hardiest fish on the planet pretty much. But
yeah,
people that get Danios, if they put other fish, let's say you've got Danios and they're like, sweet, I'm gonna put a betta in there, and the Danios terrorize the betta,
yeah, the better
a
love that
newbie
thing.
can never catch them back out because Danios are lightning quick. So
Yeah,
you learn that from working in a store when you have an employee that's recommending them. And then
yeah.
there's like this sob story and like, well, it tore apart my guppy that I bought and I can't even catch these stupid things out. This is so horrible. And then you end up as a store owner going to a house to catch out zebra Danios and teaching your employees, let's not recommend zebra Danios first. Let's make sure they actually want a super active tank.
So somebody else recommended Killifish, and I actually just got. I have a Killifish question for you because I got my. Not only have I never bred Killifish before,
Mm-hmm.
I've never even owned them until this last Saturday.
Yeah.
I got like 5 clown killies.
Okay.
Like, what are your tips on breeding them?
So those ones are awesome because they're not like the other Achilles. You can colony breed them. So you just keep a group of them. They're gonna lay eggs in the in the plants, and adult clown killies won't eat baby clown killies, but juveniles will eat babies. So like if you have only adults and they make some babies, those are great. But the next batch of babies that are going to happen like a week later, those guys totally going to devour those little ones. So you get these like you'll make like, oh, I made 6 more, and then 8 months later, oh, I made 4 more, because they have to get big enough where they're in the mode of breeding instead of I need to eat because that's my job. And so they're super duper easy. Give them a tank, but don't have other fish in there. Otherwise, you're gonna have to go the mop strategy where you put mops in, you remove them so that way you can raise the eggs outside. But colony breeding them is super fun.
What about cherry shrimp with them?
Usually it's okay as long as you have some floating plants. Like I did it with hornwort. So if you get something that
Yeah.
floats at the top, the shrimp don't spend too much time up there compared to other spots. But if you have a big shrimp colony and they're super hungry, they will eat some of the eggs.
They'll eat the eggs, right? Yeah.
Hmm.
Scott saying, "Don't killifish only live a year." Well, I they do have a shorter lifespan, but because they breed so prolifically,
Well, there's annuals and there's non-annuals, and the thing to know about like so killifish is annulatus, by the way. So it's I think it's Epiplatus annulatus. in the wild, it would be an annual. So it means that where they come from, it dries out and the eggs kind of, I don't want to say overwinter, but they sit out and then they hatch back out and the species keeps going, right?
Hmm.
But in our aquariums, we have great environments. So that fish that's only supposed to last a year, all of a sudden is lasting 3 years. And then, we get a lot longer than nature does out of our own fish. And so, yes, things like Nothos, the Nothos bronchius and that kind of stuff, they are a short-lived fish. You might be like, wow, I only got 14 months. But then
Yeah.
something like a golden wonder, you're like, that thing's 9 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody asked, what's the hardest fish to keep? Maybe a great white shark or something like that. But how about we change the question a little bit? What's a fish you would never recommend anybody to buy?
Oh, there's so many. There's so many. Like the big culprits. I'm not going to be cheap and say like, oh, the common pleco, because I think people
Yeah.
can actually reasonably keep those. There's things
Yeah.
that are way worse, and in my opinion, something that's really, really sold and probably shouldn't be is the bala shark. Like I did my best attempt in the same tank size that Murphy's in, so a 6 foot by, it was actually 5 foot front to back, so it's even bigger than Murphy's tank. And I
Hmm.
had bala sharks at 16 inches. They're huge, right? Because they kept coming into the store before I owned a store, and I'd keep rescuing them.
Yeah.
And they're a schooling fish, so now you've got
Yeah.
foot to 16-inch like crazy big fish that's schooling, and they still would bounce off walls. Like they're still
Yeah.
super skittish as a fish, and so they shouldn't be sold. One, they're named a shark because there's plenty of people that walk into the store and say, "Where's the sharks? I want to buy some sharks." So we're
Yeah.
preying on that ignorance, and then they almost never buy a school of them, and they're almost never going to have a tank big enough, so they're not just like busting their noses open on glass. And so things like that, tinfoil barbs are kind of in that realm. People aren't ready
Yeah.
for a fish that goes from this to this in 6 months. Like they're just
Yeah.
not ready, and they go, "I've grown fish before," but it's like, not like this. You haven't. You're not ready for it. You don't see it coming. And so there's stuff like that is what I would say. Like if I could prevent those being sold, I'd prevent it just so that until people knew how to care for it. Because I think everyone should have a chance at every fish. Like some people say, like we should never sell arapimas. Like no, we totally should. To the guy that turns his basement into an aquarium, he
Yeah.
should totally be allowed to buy an arapima. But if you're not that guy, maybe you can't buy one.
Um, Somebody's asking me, what is this, a 5 foot 120 behind me? This is actually a 6 foot 220 gallon, and I can lay inside it
Nice.
because I am under 6 feet tall. So your video that you put out today with the 800 gallon, the long awaited video that we hadn't
Yeah.
seen the 800 in a long time.
Yep.
And I knew that I get up at 5 in the morning for work, and what a way to wake up, a video with the 800 gallon. So, and
Mm-hmm.
it's feeding and everything like that. Actually, I'd never fed my fish frozen prawns before I'd seen you do it.
Yep.
But in the other room where you had the table with the real fish talk, you had a bunch of wood on the ground, and you're talking about the archway that you're building for the 800 gallon.
Yep.
You weren't exactly sure what fish are coming out.
Mm-hmm.
When you take those tiger barbs out, this is a side question. Are you going to sell those tiger barbs?
Yeah, they'll go to the shop. Yep.
I'll go straight to the shop.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it would be super cool if I could buy a tiger barb that was in Corey's 800
A
gallon.
lot of because we put like 300 of them in there, and there's only like 100 to 150 left. So you could even, if you bought any that were large, you may already own some. If you bought them super small, then they would not have been out of there. But plenty of people own some tiger barbs out of that tank currently. But yes, you could get on a list and get some.
That's cool. And maybe the clown loaches too, eh?
It depends. Like if they come out, I don't think I'm selling them. I think I'm just building a different tank with them.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the archway going to look like in the 800 gallon?
Well, I'm not 100% sure yet. I know that I want it so that there's like a bunch of structure, and maybe it's going to make like an M shape or just one big arc. And then depending on the fish estate, it might get planted with like Java fern or Bulbitis or Anubias. If the clownloach stay, maybe just I'm going to try Bulbitis and see if they won't tear it up. And then I've got like a foot-long ghost knife I want to put in there, and so it really depends. I kind of want the clownloach to stay. The problem is I want everything to stay except for the tiger barbs. I'm ready for the tiger barbs to come out because the tiger barbs are just dominating food quite hard. Like that many of them is making it. It's not that I can't afford to feed or water change. It literally is just getting hard to get food to certain plecos and that kind of stuff. And so I want to take them out. And then everything else I really want to stay, but there's some conflicts there. There's some big eaters. Like I'm worried with all that woodwork. Like I really got to analyze the wood and make sure there's none that can get like stuck in it. There's like
Yeah.
that's a
Oh yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure what I'm gonna do yet. And all I do know is it's at least a 1 day event, draining it and then
Hmm.
sorting fish and then building the wood, getting it in there and seeing how it looks. But I think right now, I think maybe Ladybird's coming out and the Tiger
Yeah.
Bird's coming out, and everything else might stay. But I could leave Ladybird in there too, and then maybe I take out one of the giraffe cats. Maybe one of the giraffe cats coming out anyway. It's in the air. That's part of the reason I haven't like made a move yet. Is that like I just can't. Like I'm not gonna fill it back up and then redrain it and take another fish out. It's
Yeah.
gonna be. It's kind of like I really got to know what I'm doing when we do it. So.
Question here about it's funny because I have a video on this. What should your first fish tank size be?
I personally, so there's two schools. Like the conventional wisdom is like the biggest one you can afford.
Yeah.
But in the store, if I was talking to a family or someone that was like, that didn't know aquariums and was like genuinely asking, or a family member, I tell them that I think a 29-gallon is the best tank you can start with because it's also the first tank that people buy that might be a forever tank. Like a 29-gallon can look nice, it can be a centerpiece in your living room, and you might go, "Oh, that was great." And that's all I do. But a 10-gallon, anyone who remotely enjoys it instantly wants to upgrade. But a 29, it's enough to be like, no, that's actually nice. And so that's where I think the perfect tank is a 29.
That's funny because my video on what tank should you buy
Mm-hmm.
is 29 gallon.
Nice. Yeah, I think it's cheap, and a 40 breeder is bigger, but it's got a lower profile. And for your average starting person, I don't think it's got enough space to get 3 levels of fish and that kind of stuff.
And
So,
you don't want to dump a bunch of money into a huge fish tank and 3 months later realize you hate fish.
hmm
So
yeah, I actually love 29s. That's really one of the reasons why I've got 29s in my fish room. Is I love the way they look. The
I do,
ratio
me
is
too.
nice.
That's what I use for grow out tanks
hmm
and like breeding frying.
Like I actually hate 20 longs. Much prefer a 29.
I
Like
like
it's
20
a
longs
night and
too,
day
but
difference to me. I love a 29 over a 20 long.
I got a question here from Devin. How much harder is it to keep albino guppies than regular guppies? And do you recommend keeping just shrimp if you want a shrimp tank? Or could you do a tank with guppies and plecos and still have a colony? That's a multi-layered question.
Yes. So I've got a whole series on breeding fish for profit where I recommend breeding basically guppies and shrimp, or guppy shrimp and snails, or guppy shrimp and plecos. I've done it all. So that proves it can be done. I typically did it in a little bit larger tanks, maybe not a 10-gallon, maybe it's more like a 55 in that scenario. But albino guppies are hard to keep because they have worse vision, and in general they're more inbred, and so they just seem to be weaker. In my experience, when albino blue topaz and that kind of stuff, even like red deltas, an albino version versus a blue-eyed version, night and day
Yeah.
difference in care level and that kind of stuff. So I love the red intensity that an albino will bring to a fish, but I hate how it's harder to keep alive. And if you've watched me a long time, I want to lead a movement to where we abuse guppies again and make them super hardy. It used to be that you develop a new strain, then you'd give it ick, you'd let them die off down to a few, then you would do that again. You'd get it so it almost can just like shake off ick. It could live in 50-degree to 80-degree temperatures. It would shake off velvet. Like these people that would, a stand shootable guppy meant something. Like this thing was going to be bulletproof and super duper hardy. And now it's just, how fast can we make a strain in Thailand? Does it look super cool? We'll ship it out. It's being kept with UV sterilizers. And then by the time it hits our aquarium that has fish poop and plants and a novice aquarist, it just falls apart because it was originally made to win an IFG, not an IFG, International Fancy Guppy, IFG contest.
Yeah.
And that's what it's made for. It's not made so that your son can keep it alive. And so it used to be guppies were made to be very, very hardy. Anyone could keep them. And I think we need to go back towards that, as opposed to, I've made a fish with its tail gets so big it can no longer get off the ground. I think we've gone a little bit too far at that point.
I totally agree. I started fish keeping when I was 13, and I was breeding guppies for profit. That's how I started getting into it.
Yeah.
when I was a kid, it was way easier and the technology was a lot different because I'm 38 now. So we're talking 25 years ago, and those things wouldn't die. And
well, I think it's kind of the same thing with humans now, right? We've gotten so good at antibacterial soaps and everything that our immune systems, pound for pound, are weaker than they were 30 years ago, just because we've gotten so good at sterilizing things. We're not submitting ourselves to nearly as much as we were. And I think the same thing goes on with fish. Just the fact we're running UV sterilizers and we've got so many meds that can nuke stuff. We've gotten really good at preventing bad things, almost to our detriment.
What about betta companions? I've got a question here wondering about what you would put with some bettas.
I personally will do almost anything, and that makes it dangerous.
Can I interject for 1 second? I've seen your store, and I love how you have them all in community tanks. Sorry. Anyway.
Yeah, and so like we're very lenient with what we do, but when we recommend, typically it's something that's not nippy. Like, so preface it with, obviously I'm not going to put a betta with tiger barbs, for instance. Like, they're already known to be nippy, but things like a silver tip tetra can be a little bit nippy and that kind of stuff. But in the most part, almost anything else, like a lot of live bears, a lot of the tetras, corridoras, rasboras, even most of the Danios, and really where it works is, do you know the fish? Have you kept them before? And can you change the way you keep an aquarium to make it better? So for instance, let's say you're like, zebra Danios are super nippy, but I want them to live with my betta. How do we do that? So, okay, let's get a 55-gallon tank. So that's obviously larger than a 10-gallon. Let's put a bunch of floating plants in there like hornwort, because that's where the zebra Danios want to live. We're going to slow them down a little bit. They can't just zing back and forth as fast as possible. And then let's pick a betta that is a shorter finned betta, like a plecos or something like that, instead of a real long fin betta, so it can be a little more agile. So you take a fish that's super agile, you make this a little bit more agile, but you slow down the fastest fish, and now one can kind of bob and weave out of the way of the reign of terror, and you can sprinkle the food throughout the plants so that the zebra Danios don't just zip by and take it out of the betta's mouth. Like, you have to know how those zebra Danios act and how the betta's going to act to make that work really well. And we do that in the store all the time. And so the more of a seasoned fish keeper you become, the crazier things you can do. And I think that's one of the hardest things people have in the hobby, is they go, well, I watched this guy do it. It's like, that guy's been keeping fish for 20 years.
Yeah.
You've been keeping it for 2 months. That's half the reason you're not being successful. But we as humans tend to think we progress at something way faster than we normally do. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to be the next best basketball player. I've been doing it for 2 weeks now. Like, I'm getting pretty good. I'm way better than I was, you know? So
I know you've answered this next question a bunch of times, but it keeps popping up in the chat here, and I'm gonna call somebody out for specifically reading it. Jeff Rowe here has been asking, but you've got this question lots of times. Will you ship to Canada / will you expand, like open another store? And Jeff Rowe's wondering about, seriously though, Iowa.
So when it comes to shipping, we look at it like, so I have hired on a guy that is going to make a decent amount of money, and he's going to have a lot of influence on the company. He's my new director of operations, and it's specifically so that we can really hammer on some of these topics. Can we ship to Canada? The answer is yes, we physically can. There's some things we can't, like plants is going to be ridiculously hard. Like, I could ship a plant to you, but you have to have a permit to receive it to get it through customs. So like, that's just never going to work. I can't expect random customer to have the permits. But shipping like a fertilizer or a dry good, some of that stuff we can do. But even like a fluval light, I could never ship it to Canada because the ratings for electronics are different in Canada. And that's why a lot of Phoenix products never make it to Canada, because they're not willing to pay the money to make the ratings happen. And business says basically that when you expand into Canada, you will do 5% more revenue, but the amount of work is twice as much. So if I do twice as much work, I can make 5% more money, or I could just channel that into the US. So we are looking at it, and we are making steps towards it. So for instance, like Teespring, they'll send shirts out anywhere. And so that's like one of the products we're doing. We're actively looking into how do we get more products around the world to people. because like the brand sells stuff, and we don't want to limit you. And that is one of the reasons I'm partnering with this other company. They already have, for instance, a fertilizer in the rest of the world. Now, if I can have them bottle Easy Green and sell it to the rest of the world,
Yeah.
or we can change their recipe a little bit, pretty soon the whole world can now get Easy Green, right? So that's one of the things that leveraging a partnership like that can help me do. And will I ever open up more retail stores? I would say unlikely that I will open up retail stores. I'm much more likely to open up more warehouses. So,
Mm.
and that doesn't mean
Yeah.
like just in Washington here. Like one of the strategic plays to be good at online business would be to have one on the West Coast, one in the Midwest, and one on the East Coast. And then when someone places an order, you dispatch the order from the closest warehouse. So all of a sudden you have 1 day shipping no matter where you are in the country. And so when you do more warehouses like that, that's plenty of good opportunity to have more fan meetups and that kind of stuff. And naturally, like if I put one in Minnesota, like Twin Cities Guppies is saying, then it's like
Yeah.
I'll naturally have to visit there, right? So that
Yeah.
would be more in line with what we're going to do. There is some businesses that have reached out to me that want consulting, and unfortunately, my time has become worth a lot. Like, and it's not even just like, oh, I could go live on my channel and I make over $100 an hour in super chats. It's the fact that like the director of operations that I hired to do what I do costs me so much money that
Yeah.
the more time I'm away, the more he has to do, and the more people like that I have to hire. And so
Yeah.
it's, like I quoted one store, and they really like, how do we fix what we're doing? And like I was like, I could totally help you, but legitimately it's like $1,000 a day for me to be out there analyzing and actually fixing your stuff. Like anything less than that, I can't actually fix your stuff. I can't fix it from across the way. I can give you tips. And I always tell people, like, I'll give you plenty of information for free, but there's
Yeah.
something to be said for actually being in there and going, no, you got to move this. This item's in the wrong place. You got to drop this line. You got to change your margin here. I didn't realize that you smell like a dirty old pet store. Like, those are things that I notice, and like I'm constantly combating in my own store. Like I can't walk into their bathroom and go, your bathroom's dirty. You're losing 10% of your revenue because the wife of the person that came in can't use the bathroom. Like there's things like that
Yeah.
that are so basic, and yet they're convinced the PetSmart down the road is killing them. And it's like, no, your bathroom is a science experiment. Like that is the first step to fixing what you got going on. And so I don't want to take over the industry. I want to help the industry. And I do have an honest fear that, like, say I opened up another aquarium co-op and another one, what stops me from becoming the next PetSmart? And eventually something can always scale to the point where you're not what you used to be. There's very few companies that pull that off long term. You got to really be focused on it. And so like when I'm training the new director of ops and stuff like that, I have to keep reminding him, we make this decision because I think it's right, not because it's what's good for money, And so a lot of businesses are money driven, and we have to make money, but we're driven by certain ethics and certain goals. Like, oh, make $1 billion is definitely on the like, oh yeah, that'd be great. But changing the hobby is right next to it. And I'd almost say this one's more important. And because there's plenty of companies probably making a ridiculous amount of money in the aquatic industry, and in my opinion, not very many really making any innovation. When, like we've talked about this, when I go abroad, when's the last time someone in America actually innovated an aquatic product? Like I'm not sure I can think of one in the last 20 years that we developed and we pioneered that wasn't already done in Asia or Germany or something like that. Like we're not innovators here anymore.
Great answer. I think that part of your store, the hominess that it has, is part of the appeal of your store. And if you expand, you may lose that in those other locations. But if there was one thing, and you did mention Teespring, if there was one thing, like everyone wants to be a part of Aquarium Co-op, like me, like everyone here
Yeah.
watching. So the fact that you could ship shirts anywhere, that I think that if you're going to ship one thing, it would be like clothing. That's just
Yes.
my opinion, but
Well, when you study, and I love to study, I love information. That's why I love aquariums and testing. But when you study this psychology of humans, they they really want reciprocity. They want that, like they're watching the live stream right now and they're getting benefit.
Yeah.
What will be even better is when they can give back to you. So the day you get super chats and that kind of stuff, when they can give back $1, now they feel like I've invested and I'm a part of this community. Right now, like it doesn't go on for very long. Like let's say your neighbor mows your lawn. You're like, wow, that was super nice of them. And then they mow it next week. And then they mow it next week. Now you're angry at him. You're like, this guy's trying to one up me. You know, it went from a super nice thing to this guy's trying to make me look bad, even though in his mind, he's just trying to be super nice. But all of a sudden, you take that same scenario and his son mows your lawn and you gave him $10. Now it's the best relationship ever of like, oh, I'm helping his teenage son. He's got money to go to football camp. And like the entire relationship went from we're arguing to the best thing ever. And the same thing happens with almost every human transaction is there are X amount of people that will, don't have a problem with taking something for free, but most people deep down, they get a much better relationship by investing in something. And it
makes them feel better about themselves.
Exactly. They make it feel better about a purchase, anything like that. And so it's very important that it's a two-way street. And I know that I'm not able to provide that worldwide. And it's not even about making money. Like the Teespring shirts we sell outside the United States don't make us like any money because you start converting to euros and all of a sudden printing costs are much higher.
Didn't I hear you say you made like $1?
Yeah, it's like if someone buys one and they live in Africa, it's literally like $1. And don't get me wrong, that is still profit. I'm not, poo-pooing just $1. I'm just saying that like I'm not spending all of my time to develop this product so I can make dollars. It's, like in the US, I could develop a product that makes way more money. It's purely about hopefully supplying something that is in demand and trying to make it happen. And, we're constantly looking at ways to do that. We've looked at, one of the company I'm partnering with is not in the US. That's the main reason I would partner with them is so they can help distribution worldwide of just getting my sticker to, to Holland or something. Like it doesn't have to be giant things, but just stuff like that is important to me. And if I want to get everyone together to change this hobby, I can't just get United States. I got to get everyone together to try and help.
Yeah. Hawaiian Peacock is saying that I can't handle this kind of traffic with all these viewers. Come on, Mel, you're on my stream every week. You know we get way up to one. Okay, we get 30. We're only going to do a couple more questions because Corey's time is very valuable, and we've already gone over the 1 hour that I said we were going to be on. But there's I don't know the answer to this one either. Do you still have the dojo loach in your 800-gallon?
I do. Yep. It's still in there. It just didn't come out to eat. Like all the big loaches came out this last time. Nope, it's still in there. And there's so many things that are in there. Like it's a funny thing. So I didn't even realize I didn't show the dojo loach, but I would wager until I make the next 800-gallon video, lots of questions like that are going to come up, which before everyone wanted to know if the reticulated hillstream loach was still in there because I didn't show them.
Which you did mention today.
Yeah. So it's in my mind of like, oh, I got to make sure because people, I've answered this question like 700 times now. And so when you're just filming and like, so a day in the life of like, I'm thinking like, okay, I got this meeting I got to do. I got to go pick up this. I got to do that. I got to talk with one of my managers. I got to do this thing. I got to move that turtle. I got to feed. I got to film this video. All that is what's on my mind, not like, oh, I forgot to show the dojo loach, and yet I'll have to hear about it for the next month and a half till I put out a new update. Like, look, I'm not, people always assume I'm trying to hide like I killed something. Like, trust me, killing stuff is the best rating on YouTube. Like, if I kill stuff, I'm going to let you know because it gets tons of views.
Yeah.
It's mostly like, no, it was just over there, literally off camera chowing down, and I forgot to move the camera over towards it.
Yeah. Another question here, and this is this person's opinion. Why is aquascaping farther ahead in Europe than it is in America?
So we've had long conversations about this, and I think it's the way America is structured versus the rest of the world. So America, in general, per household, we work way more hours than other people, just in general. And so we don't have as much time for a very detailed hobby like that. We have to set aside time every day to manicure and aquascape well. And there's just, like you go to Germany and you're like, literally Germany basically closes down at 5 o'clock still. And Sunday, so there's things you learn like on Sunday, no trucks can drive on the road, no semi trucks, nothing like that, because it's a family day. So all the families are on the road, no trucks can be on the road at all. And in America, we would never do something like that. We're business all the time. And so in general, we're working 40, 50, 60 hours a week. And a lot of other countries are working 20, 30, 40 hours a week. 40 would be like, wow, you're working a lot. And it's just we're trying to make ends meet. We're busy and we have different dynamics than other people have. And we typically like, so even if you only work 40 hours, isn't like the average commute now in the US like 45 minutes? Like you don't really have that when you're like, oh, I live in Germany. And you're like, well, Germany is the size of Washington, like,
Yeah.
so all these other places that
Yeah.
seem crazy big are actually really small and they don't have these wicked big commutes and all that kind of stuff. And so I think it's literally just the time. There's more time available, and I plus I think something. The more famous it gets somewhere, the more likely they are to do it. So if they get a head start, they're going to be better at it. And I think we'll do it. We do it more and more every year. It's that I don't know that we're ever going to be like 2 years from now, be like, oh, we're all doing it. It'll still be like, well, maybe we've just caught up. And I don't try to think about it like, why are they so far ahead? It's more of like, why are they making that choice versus something else? Like we have way more African cichlids in the United States than the rest of the world combined. But then when you look at it, like
Really?
our houses are twice the size of everyone else's houses in the world. So
Yeah.
you need bigger tanks for Africans and South and Central American cichlids. And so they ask the same question. Why do they have all the cichlids and why don't we? It's like, well, it comes down to your house typically is 800 to 1,000 square feet. Our houses are typically 1,500 to 3,000 square feet.
Yeah. I know what you mean. I kind of learned that the hard way in Spain, showing up in a town like, let's get some food. Oh, it's siesta. Everything is closed.
Yeah, it's shocking when you're like, how everything is closed. Like,
Yeah.
so
There's
when I
nobody
say
on the street.
everything, literally the gas station closes at 6. It's not 24 hours or nothing like that in Germany. You're like, oh, you don't get gas before 6? There's no gas to get today. Like, that is crazy.
There's a lot of comments and stuff in here about how Korie is the most generous person in the fish hobby. And I just want to take the time to say thank you to Korie for coming on this tiny little channel here today. I mean, I really appreciate it. I mean, you've made the year for Friday Fish Facts.
Well,
And
I always like to be honest. And while, yes, I try to be very generous, in an industry where people aren't generous, if you're the guy being generous, there's lots to gain. And so, like, obviously, half of my influence and stuff like that, like, people come to me because I'm giving and I'm being different. If everyone was being Mother Teresa, I wouldn't stand out at all. So, half of me being on a live stream like this is one, I enjoy talking, and two, I enjoy the fans, and three, like, people will go, wow, he was on a little live stream, like I like him that much more. Like there's always that component, and I never want to forget that. Like I don't want people to think like I'm just doing good things. Like it's clearly a good business move as well to be doing this stuff, but it's not the only reason. Otherwise I would just do it all the time. I'd be like, I would seek you out, like, can I be on your thing, and it makes me look good. Like I'm not trying to do that
anytime this
either.
week, oh,
Yeah,
I can't.
exactly.
I've got
Yeah,
another guest lined up, actually. Sorry. I can't do it.
yeah.
You're very transparent. Like I believe that who I see on YouTube is who you are, which is
Yeah. The
quite
only the
quite an
only difference in
accomplishment.
person is I swear more.
Well,
Like
yeah, everyone does.
exactly, and it's only because I don't want to. Well, it's not even that I want to offend people. It's that I can't know the people listening right now aren't with all their kids in their living room, and I would never swear like that in front of a bunch of kids or something. But
Exactly.
so like I know I wouldn't do that in person, so I have to make it so I swear not at all on camera because especially when you've got 30,000 people are going to watch something, like it's going to be in every scenario. Your grandma's going to be in the room or whatever, like
Yeah.
and you wouldn't do that in every situation. Or maybe you want to have it on the background while you're working at work, and so I limit myself to do that. Not that I'm the guy that swears like a sailor, but that's about the
Yeah.
biggest difference. Like when I meet fans are like, did you just swear? You never swear. It's like, well, yeah, I mean there's appropriate times to swear a little bit. Yeah.
I mean, I know what you mean. I mean, I'm a tradesman. Well, I'm in
Hmm.
sales and a trades, but I'm a tradesman. But
Yeah.
I've got two little kids, and the two little
Hmm.
kids are involved in my fish channel.
Yep.
So I want to make it appropriate for everyone. So anyway, sorry about this, Korie. I know we keep going on. We're
that's all right.
We're going way over the 1 hour mark. I want to say a huge thank you to all the mods today that worked super hard. They're not used to having this much traffic on the chat, and I really appreciate everything you guys do for me every week. And I'm very thankful to Korie to coming on, and I tried to get like everyone's questions answered that are on here on a regular basis. So thanks very much, and thank you, Korie. And next week, I've got Joseph from JH Aquatics is coming on.
Nice.
For a Wednesday night stream.
You get to know a man when you spend a week in the jungle with him. He's a good guy.
Okay.
He's a good
We're
guy.
going to be talking a lot about Peru, which we never even had a chance to talk to you about tonight. But Corey's got his 4-hour live stream on tomorrow, starting at 10 o'clock.
10 a.m. It's going to be a long one.
Pacific time.
Only if we get at least 100 likes on this live stream. We're at 94. I'll make this promise. If we don't get to 100, I won't do the live stream tomorrow. I'll literally call it off.
I think I've got a dummy account that I'm going to unsubscribe now.
That's right.
No. Well, anyway, Korie, thank you so much. It's been a great time. This is like, I mean, I always have fun. That's why I kind of started doing the guest on with me every Wednesday night, because it was much more fun to talk with someone than to just talk into a screen.
Sure.
But I haven't had more fun, and I've had great guests on. I had never had more fun than this one. Thank you so much. And we'll see everybody next time. Tune into Korie's stream tomorrow. And my American friends, have a happy Thanksgiving tomorrow.
And subscribe if you haven't already. If this is your first time, subscribe. See what he's talking about.
Appreciate that, Korie. Thanks very much.